mean, for us, Hunts Point is our home.
People in this neighborhood are very resilient, and they've been on the cutting edge of a lot of movements.
We are under no illusions that there's anybody coming in to save us, which is not.
People just say, you know what, these people want to be poor, they want to be uneducated, they want to have children at a young age, they want to be depressed, and that's not the case, you know, that really isn't. People really want to see something good for their families here.
It's important to love your neighbors. I love everyone. We love each other, we look out for each other. That's a community.
Why do you have to measure success by how far you get away from your own community? Why can't you build something great right here?
My day starts at 3 a.m. I'm at the market at 5. It's a 2.5 hour wait. I make 2 trips. From the market to here, maybe 10 minutes, and then they unload, and then I go for my second trip.
Pat Watson, Miss Pat, as the community lovingly calls her, has been feeding Hunts Point for years. She founded Pat's Outreach Ministry in 2015 out of the back of her car. She eventually found her way to the Point Community Development Corporation. That's where she gives out truckloads of food every Tuesday.
You want any of this? Hey, Miss Hilda, how you doing?
Okay.
You okay? Haven't seen you in a long time.
Okay. How are you?
Oh, look at you! We serve working people and non-working people. I do not pick and choose who I serve. It does not matter if you have a job, I still will serve you. My job is to serve. There's so many people in this world today that have a job that can't keep their head above the water.
She gets the produce donated from 2 local food distributors.
People are out here at 6 o'clock in the morning, so there is a high need for food. Hunger has no gender or no color. It means a lot to me, and it also means showing love to the community that I'm a part of.
Hunts Point is on a peninsula located at the southeast corner of the Bronx. We're going to focus on its central area, Hunts Point Avenue, and 2 of its cross streets, Garrison and Lafayette Avenues. Hunts Point has for centuries been an industrial area influenced by changing infrastructure and the resulting pollution. Isolated and at times neglected, Hunts Point was left to fend for itself, succumbing to years of crime, drugs, prostitution, and fires. To survive and flourish, locals learned to rely on each other, on the Hunts Point community. In all, the story of Hunts Point is a story of revitalization, written by the people who live there. In the late 19th century, when the Bronx became part of New York City, mansions lined the Bronx River.
You had a lot of wealthy people from New York, or prominent people in New York, that actually bought land all along waterfront.
But their pristine views were marred by a trash dump on Rikers Island.
The smell of the garbage would waft over Hunts Point. Eventually, the people who lived there, and they said, I'm not taking this anymore, I'm leaving.
The area continued to change after the New York City subway extended to the Bronx in the early 1900s, bringing with it the demand for cheaper housing.
People would travel up the subways. It was only 5 cents a ride then. And developers, seeing the subways were there, would build apartment houses.
Infrastructural changes continued in the mid-1900s. First came the major Deegan Expressway, then the Cross Bronx Expressway. That paved the way for industry like the Hunts Point Market, a food hub for the city, to move in. Then came the Bruckner Expressway, which isolated the Hunts Point Peninsula. All of these new expressways also made it easier for wealthy people with cars to migrate to the suburbs. Property values in Hunts Point plummeted to disastrous effect.
Is any engine company in the Bronx available?
That is a live picture, and obviously a major fire in a large building in the South Bronx.
No lives in danger. It's good news.
Burning buildings are a common sight. Most of them are deliberate cases of arson.
Oh, they got enough fire to keep them busy for a hell of a while.
It's almost a daily occurrence in the South Bronx that firemen are injured.
Landlords wanted to get rid of their properties, and one way to do it was burn it out
and get their insurance. Well, I remember one of the officers, we were cruising along in our fire truck, and he said that was the 7th fire we had today. We're talking about apartments, maybe a whole building going. That was routine.
For 20 years, firefighter John Finucane was in the trenches. He was part of Engine 85. He watched the Bronx burn.
At nighttime, they would see glows in the sky. That's how bad it was. All those years of constant burning.
The unscrupulous landlord after unscrupulous landlord does the same thing. He hires an arsonist, and then he goes to the insurance company and collects on that huge fire insurance policy, and he simply walks away.
The Bronx was burning, and the South Bronx was its wick. Over 1 decade, 7 census districts in the Bronx reportedly lost more than 97% of their buildings.
They left the building, walked away, and the city did nothing. Nobody did nothing. What happened in the South Bronx stayed in the South Bronx.
Unlike the firefighters who got to go home, for Hunts Point natives like Majora Carter, this was their daily reality.
I was at 7 or so. That's when I noticed the burnings, literally, because the 2 buildings at either end of my block burned down at the beginning of the summer. That's when I realized there was something up with my community.
During the fires and for years after, the Hunts Point area of the Bronx lay in ruins.
There is nothing like the South Bronx anywhere in the country. It's 12 square miles of crime and violence, decay and desolation.
For many residents, the last straw came in the late 1990s. Then Mayor Rudy Giuliani planned to build a waste transfer station along the Bronx River. The community had no alternative but to rebuild itself.
That's when I realized, oh, this only happens in communities that are poor and of color and politically vulnerable. I could not pretend that I don't see it.
We do have to work together to create the kind of environment that's not going to hurt the people that live here.
The South Bronx was already handling 40% of the city's waste. This new facility would double that. Carter, along with other community members, fought against the campaign and won. She continued her environmental justice advocacy by founding the Sustainable South Bronx, an organization that still exists in the community today. With the neighborhood's resurgence came new businesses like the Boogie Down Grind Cafe, a coffee shop that Carter, a developer and entrepreneur, owns and operates. She advocates for the concept of self-gentrification.
Define self-gentrification for us.
It's not the development that's a problem. It's how the development happens, who does it, who benefits, and who is it ultimately for. But this is development that is by us and for us.
How many people from Hunts Point? So we're repping inside your hood.
Gentrification doesn't start happening when you start to see, what could be the fancy coffee shop or the doggy daycares or even like better apartment buildings going up for higher income people. It starts when we start telling people in communities like that there's no value here.
Self-gentrification is a word or a phrase that we hear a lot about in Hunts Point. Can you tell me what that means to you?
I mean, I think it's a joke, to be very honest with you. I don't think that term really exists.
Danny Peralta is the executive managing director of the Point Community Development Corporation. It's an organization that Carter was once heavily involved in. The two both seek to improve the neighborhood, but have different visions on what doing that looks like.
We're seeing, some of our neighbors, people that have lived here for a long time, not only be able to afford to live here anymore. Gentrification is just like, let me take advantage of the opportunities that I have for myself, and let me be the model that you want to see because you don't know any better, type of thing. It's very condescending in some ways.
Peralta says rising prices could change Hunts Point for the worse.
It's really about eliminating the things that made these communities vital and interesting. That's what's going to be missing when we do that, because when you open up the doors for people to move in that don't understand the culture, and you replace this culture, then you really replace the fabric of this neighborhood.
Self-gentrification, in my opinion, is just a pretty term to polish up gentrification, and I think it's often used by people who see the personal benefits that it may have for them and not for the community. Whether it's gentrification or self-gentrification, it's still displacing communities. when I was growing up here in the South Bronx, you were considered successful if you were able to get out. And I think now it's admirable when people see that, you know, you were able to get out, or you had the choice to get out and you decide to stay.
And before we get to that part where we're, you know, on the cover of Time magazine for being a disaster, we really want to be on Time magazine for really trying to solve these issues ahead of time and really setting an example for how other communities can operate and be resilient on their own.
The best way for Hunts Point to move forward is a debate that still simmers. In the meantime, community members like Pat Watson continue to sustain and nourish the health and spirit of the neighborhood.
In order to do what I do, you have to have love in your heart. That's what drives me to do that. Love for my community, love for my neighborhood, and love for people.